Hello, can anyone hear me? Alrighty. People can hear me now. Let's go. All right. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? How's everybody been? Let me look back through the chat here. Sorry. Technical issues. Let me look. Congratulations, Ty Marshall, on being an uncle. How exciting. That's awesome. Hello, Ty. Let me go through the list and say hello to everyone. We got a lot of people in here today. Hello to Crazy Anime Gamer. Hello to Caesar. Hello to Moro. Hello to Walt Zero. Hello to Midnight. Hello again, once again to Ty Marshall. Hello to Christian Rivera. It's so good to see everybody tonight. How is everybody doing? Alrighty, let's see what's going on in chat really quick before we get to the nitty gritty. Let's take a look. So last week I donated to Miss Wholesome Girlfriend ASMR. So Gemini, you are now on the list for Apex. How do you feel about playing Apex with Wholesome Girlfriend ASMR? Well, that sounds exciting. Now I have to find out what I gotta do. Hello, Faith Stefan. How exciting. All right, and then I'll plan, and you know what? I'll make sure to get my stuff downloaded. I have to get Apex downloaded to make sure everything's all good to go for that. That would be awesome. Hype. Amazing hype. Let's see. Oh my goodness. That's so exciting. So very, very exciting. Oh my gosh. So exciting. Let me go and pull something up really quick. I'm just going to do something really quick for you guys. So, as you all know, the plan for the stream, oh, let me look. Amazing crossover. Yeah, to be honest, I would be really interested. It's in October on Sundays. Okay, then I actually probably could do that. I've been back at work for 3 days after a second round of COVID. It's a nasty little bugger, isn't it? I am so sorry to hear that, Anime Gamer. Please make sure that you're resting up well. Also, any updates on the channel and for the VTuber model? Yes, I have a lot of updates for you guys today. It's really interesting. I'm pretty excited, hyped, ready to go. And so I have a lot of things to talk to you guys about. Okay, so I think I mentioned this last time that we were on a stream together. I think I mentioned it on the Genshin Impact stream. That I plan to try and soon have a consistent schedule of when the streams will be happening super consistently since I just moved. So that's one of the big things. Soon we'll have Gemini audios schedules that will be up every single week. So you guys know when those are going on. We most likely will be getting another pre-stream on Twitter, most likely. I also have recently set up rigging, so I should be able to live stream on Twitch and YouTube at the same time, meaning that we'll have our Twitch fan that watches and our YouTube fan that watches. I also plan to start posting my ASMR videos on Twitch as well, based on current stuff with YouTube. I'm kind of making a plan to also archive and save all of my videos on Twitch. So if you feel like you don't feel comfortable with YouTube at the current moment, on the YouTube sphere, I also plan to possibly do live streams of live streaming the audios for the ASMR, depending on how long they are, onto Twitch. Most likely I will be multi-streaming. It's really exciting for that kind of stuff. I'm excited to see where that goes from there. because I really want to be able to reach out to so many people, but also based on some of the rules that might be placed on YouTube soon. I'm not sure. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, YouTube put out a statement about possible policy changes that will soon possibly be happening that actually would probably directly affect some of the ASMR community. There is a lot of stuff going on currently right now. For example, there was a call out about sexually gratifying content, which is really a problem kind of we have in the BA community of individuals who take a lot of the ASMR role plays and doing some other stuff as well. I heard the news that Twitch is not doing well. Yeah, there's a really interesting thing going on with Twitch as well, but I thought at least both platforms, if need be, I can get it out there and stuff is holding. I am thinking about actually uploading all of the videos to my Patreon and doing a free upload every single week, but also having a couple bonus content stuff that you can get through Patreon because you were actually allowed to post on Patreon for some things for free. And that people have access to some of the stuff for free. But I also have some stuff that's like premium access for people that are like, who are Magnolia's Dewdrops and Lucille's Loves on there. There's different levels that you can to support me. I'm trying to figure out the best options because if YouTube continues on the path they're going, who knows what they're going to try and restrict. Also, I would like to put out a PSA to my fans individually. I would like to take this time to inform some of my fans about a serious issue that is happening within the ASMR community. And I think you guys should know about it and that you guys should start spreading the word. So, if you do not know, the ASMR community has had a history, not per se a history, more occurrences recently and in the past couple 1 to 2 years of individuals coming out of the woodwork who are specifically doing some very disgusting and vile kind of acts. Specifically, individuals that are purposely flirting or manipulating minors into relationships through using their ASMR content and through their communities. I am speaking about this because one of the individuals that was originally kicked out of the community has come back under a different moniker, and he has come back to the community specifically. He originally went by Zaid. He now goes under Dead Body Speaks. He is a serious danger to the ASMR community. It's worrying as we have seen the aftermath of what's happened with people like him in the past. So there's lots of stuff like that. But besides all of that stuff going on, I just want to remind you all to stay smart while on the internet, stay smart within our communities, and just take the time you need to think about things and just be calm about stuff. That's important. So, besides that, tonight we'll be doing a studying session, and also I will be doing some studying. I have 2 things I actually have to study tonight. You guys are lucky you do not have to hear me in my broken Spanish try to practice my Spanish tonight, I promise you. So I have some options because I have a couple things I have to study and do tonight. And so I have a couple options for you all. So at the current moment, I have the option to do my anthropology work because I have an anthropology class. I have a math and statistics class. And I also have a horror literature class that I do, that I take for my degree. And so I'm currently reading Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And so I thought, if we would like, and what we would do is this. You guys can pick what I start with tonight, and if you would like, I can start by reading Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and we can work through it together and do annotations, and it might help with people studying. Or I can play music, and we can all study together, and I can look at some questions that pop up within the community tab here, and then I can answer some questions. So it's up to y'all. So you guys tell me, so what you would like to do. Would you like me to just give you some options? What do you think we want to go with today? So let me put this in here. I'm going to put some options. if you guys have questions, I actually am studying to be an English teacher. So feel free that if you have questions for English assignments and how I as a teacher would want to help you, and what I would recommend, feel free. I'm about to put the poll into chat right now so that I can get this sorted for you. And then we'll add one more option, which is there we go. Has anyone seen what's happened in Puerto Rico the past few days? Yes. Also, guys, if you can, please go and support the people in Puerto Rico. They are going through a horrible time right now, and they are dealing with a mess of a system right now, and so they deserve a lot of help and a lot of people doing their best to support them if possible. Please just do what you can to make things better for the community, for those people. They are trying to survive in a very scary situation right now, and it's a really rough time for them. So please do your best to go and support them. And also, while we study tonight, please be aware to have snacks and drinks and all kinds of good stuff. Also, really important little tidbit, next week, I plan to stream, and I'm just clarifying with my work schedule, but sometime next week, we will be having the charity live stream for Stud. So, the charity live stream for Stud. When that charity live stream happens, you'll see it pop up. I will be pre-scheduling that stream and getting it sorted. I will be doing stuff. The big thing for Stud, as we mentioned before in past streams, Stud is dealing with financial difficulties for financial aid. And so it's very important that we help others because in this community, we value education and we value bettering ourselves for a better life. So if you have the time, if you have the money to drop by, if you're able to help out in any way, I will have the link to Stud's I believe it is what's it called? He has a campaign going for this to help him with his education. So if you have a possibility of donating even just a little, then that's totally fine. And I'll get the links from Stud just to make sure that I have the right things for you. But remember, we like to support people here in the community. And so I'm going to give this poll just another minute before we see. To answer your question, Crazy Anime Gamer, I plan to teach AP and regular English. I also am studying to become a special education teacher and specifically deal with autistic children, which is one thing I do, and specifically autistic high school students. So that I can help them move forward and get through some of their difficulties. That's what it is. I'll make a GoFundMe. Oh, Stud's going to make a GoFundMe. So that way it's easy for that. And so also Gemini has a new audio. Don't forget to check it out. Yes, I do have a couple new audios out. I also have some other couple announcements before we get started on Frankenstein. Because it looks like Frankenstein has won our poll here. Oh, between anthropology and Frankenstein. So I'll give it a couple more minutes and see who wants to go with what. There's a lot going on with that. So please, if you can, please go support Stud. And even after my stream, if you can't support right away, I will be posting and leaving Stud's information pinned to the top of my Twitter, as well as I'll be posting it on the community tab for us. Here in the Cosmos, we like to support one another, so let's do that. Also, hello to the people that said hello to me. I can't respond that fast. I'm sick for real. Okay, I'm sorry, Stud. Okay, so does all of my sweeties have COVID? What is going on? Why does everyone have COVID? Okay, also, to answer what's going on here really quickly, update. Either by this weekend or next weekend, the Gemini Audio's merch shop will be up. Also, I'm hoping, because I'm a perfectionist, forgive me, the VTuber model should hopefully be up soon, and I am getting my capture cards sorted so that I can start getting some stuff. We get water recently. We've been without power for almost a week. Christian, are you in Puerto Rico right now? Let's see. We will also, yes, that's correct, Caesar. We will also have memberships to go back and answer through here, FAFSA probation. Yep. And then we got word recently, Christian, are you in Puerto Rico right now? Is that where you live, Christian? And also, Faith asked a question, any tips on writing essays? To be honest, it really depends on the essay that you're trying to write. For example, if you're going to write a persuasive essay, always, 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 always do outlines. It's very important. I always say that if you're going to start with a persuasive essay, always have a minimum of 3 to 4 reasons why for persuasion's sake. I always say tie it into something personal. Second one, always tie it into influential. And the next two, tie it into something that is just scientific. So facts or stats. When you bring someone into an essay and bring it in with a personal reason or a reason that would bring someone to do something like that, it's very important and it really helps you sell your point. If you're doing research essays, right, always have primary sources, which means original sources, which would be classified as books or a direct thing of the individual things that you're copying. Even interviews, if you're doing a research paper on a specific person, if you can find interviews and documents of that original person, which you can find in most standard libraries or online resource, those classify as primary sources. So please use those. And then also secondary sources. The more sources, the better. Even if you don't end up using all of your sources, that group amount of knowledge is really going to help you and put stuff forward for you to make things better. I also believe strongly in trying to use new words. You will not believe how many essays I read and papers and short stories that use the same words over and over and over again. Now here's the big thing. If you're using a term like light, fire, things like that are for thematic purposes, those are not a problem to use. Sorry. There's loud people outside. Imagine drag racing in the middle of the night. Secondly, so there's a lot of stuff like that, but also a lot of things that you can add to those that really make stuff amazing, and they add to your writing that makes stuff better. Let me see. Mauro, thank you. Mauro, sorry to hear this, but I hope you feel better. Okay, also, I almost forgot to mention, if you guys want to see more Study Aid stream, you gotta like, comment, and subscribe. We're almost at 3K. Actually, we are almost at 3K. It is quite crazy to me how close we are to 3K. But based on the poll I'm seeing, it looks like we are going to start today's study stream with Frankenstein. So we're going to start our study stream today with Frankenstein. So we're going to start from the beginning and read through Frankenstein. And then probably by each section I will do an analysis of Frankenstein so that you guys know what's going on with that. So we're going to skip past the introduction. Little fun fact about Frankenstein. Mary Shelley's a trip. Like, she's a lot. Mary Shelley had a very difficult and complicated life. Her husband is wild. There's a lot going on with the Shelleys. It's a lot. Funny enough, Percy Shelley was married when he met Mary Shelley and abandoned his wife to marry Mary Shelley. There's a lot that is the whole gig with the Shelley family. It's a lot. So there's a lot of things you can look into and find out about. So as we start in this little reading of ours, feel free to just take a little listen, a little peek, a little listen into what's going on for that. And that way you guys can really hear the story. So let's grab this. Yes, he is one of the classic monsters. And so instead of reading Percy Shelley's preface, we're going to hop right into it, which is Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus. And it starts with a quote. Did I request thee, maker, from my clay to mold me man? Did I solicit thee from darkness to promote me? Which is actually from the book Paradise Lost. So if anyone has read that, that's another trip book too. Yes, actually, I can do that. Let me pick one really quick. I'm going to add some horror music. Caesar's perfect. Let's set the ambiance of this. Let me just set the ambiance of this really quick. I think, let me just listen to this really quick. Let's see if there's like 10 hours of horror or something. Which would be just wild. Let me just, hold on. Is this, hold on. Hold on. Okay. Let's see. Let me check this one out. Oh, actually, this one's way better. It's really, it's lovely. Okay, we're gonna go with this one because this is really gonna give us those Mary Shelley vibes, guys. I'm very hyped about this. While I just pull that up, we can do that. Also, big shout outs to Wholesome Girlfriend ASMR because apparently I've been signed up for Apex. So like, shout out. Awesome. That's also funny because I also plan to do Halloween merch too. Okay, perfect. We're all living a life. Let's see. Also, Jim, I'll send you the college info stuff. For the donut stream, I have to save up to get a new laptop for college and make audios as well. Oh, okay. Hold on 1 second, guys. Oh, to answer your question, Stud, I'm a bit echoey right now because I'm using my laptop because my microphone for some reason will not connect to Streamlabs. So sadly, it's going to be a little bit echoey this time. I apologize. Until I can actually fix it. I didn't want to delay the stream any longer for you guys because I said I would do the stream. Yes, I have, and it has a really rough time. Don't know why. I actually, this is when I'm gonna get Michi to come and help us because he's a lifesaver when it comes to that stuff. I have not played that game, but I've heard about it actually. Okay, and I'm about to add the music in, guys. So give us 1 second. We'll get real spooky in a minute. Oh, it's Mafia's birthday! Happy birthday to Mama Mafia. She is one of our lovely Comets. We love her to death. She is an angel. We adore her. Where's the... Hold on. Hold on 1 second, guys. The screen may change for a second. I'm just checking a detail that's on the other screen really quick. Give me 1 second. Okay. There it is. Okay. We added this one in. Alright guys, how does that sound? Do you need it to be a little lower? How does that sound? How does that sound, guys? Sound good? And can you hear me well enough? Appreciate that. And here's what we're gonna do. I think I'm gonna take these out right now.
How does this sound, guys? How does this sound? Much better? Does that sound better? How does this sound, guys? How does this sound? Much better? Oh, that sounds so much better. Okay. So, tonight we begin our night with a reading from Mary Shelley. We start with letter 1 from Frankenstein. To Mrs. Saville, England, St. Petersburg, December 11th, 17. You are rejoiced to hear that no disaster has accompanied the commencement of an enterprise which you have regarded with such evil forebodings. I arrived here yesterday, and my first task is to assure my dear sister of my welfare, and increasing confidence in the success of my undertaking. I am already far from north of London, and as I walk in the streets of St. Petersburg, I feel a cold northern breeze play upon my cheeks, which brace my nerves and fills me with delight. Do you understand this feeling? This breeze which has traveled from the region towards which I am advancing, giving me a foretaste of those icy climes. Inspirited by this wind of promise, my daydreams become more fervent and vivid. I try in vain to be persuaded that the pole is the seat of frost and desolation. It ever presents itself to my imagination as a region of beauty and delight. There, Margaret, the sun is forever visible, its broad disk just skirting the horizon and diffusing a perpetual splendor. There, for with your leave, my sister, I will put some trust in presidenting navigators. Their snow and frosts are banished, and sailing over a calm sea, we may be wafted to a land surpassing in wonders and in beauty every region hetero discovered on inhabitable globe. Its production and features may be without example, as the phenomena of heavenly bodies undoubtedly are in those undiscovered solitudes. What may not be expected in a country of eternal light? I may there discover the wondrous power which attracts the needle, and may regulate 1,000 celestial observations that may require only this voyage to render their seeming intricities consistent forever. I shall satiate my ardent curiosity with the sight of a part of the world that is never before visited, and may tread a land never before imprinted by the foot of man. These are my enticements, and they are sufficient to conquer all fear of danger or death, and to induce me to commence this laborious voyage with the joy a child feels when he embarks in a little boat, with his holiday mates on an expedition to discover his native river. Oh, goodbye, Caesar. Have a wonderful night. Thank you. Thank you for donation. Thank you. Okay. But supposing all of these conjectures to be false, you cannot contest the insatiability of benefit which I shall confer on to all mankind, to the last generation, by discovering a passage near the pole to those countries to reach which at present so many months are requested, or by asserting the secret of the magnet, which, if all possible, can only be effected by the undertaking such as mine. These reflections have dispelled the agitation with which I began my letter, and I feel my heart glow with an enthusiasm which elevates me to the heavens, for nothing contributes so much to tranquilize the mind as steady purpose, a point on which the soul may fix its intellectual eye. This expedition has been the favorite dream of my early years, and I have read with ardor the accounts of various voyages which have been made in the prospect of arriving at the North Pacific Ocean, through the seas which surround the pole. You may remember that a history of all voyages made for the purpose of discovery composed the whole of our good Uncle Thomas's library. My education was neglected, yet I was passionately fond of reading. These volumes were my study day and night, and my familiarity with them increased that regret which I had felt as a child on learning that my father's dying injunction had forbidden my uncle to allow me to embark on a seafaring life. These visions faded when I perused for the first time those poets whose infusions entranced my soul and lifted it to heaven. I also became a poet, and for 1 year lived in a paradise of my own creation. I imagined that I also might obtain a niche in the temple whom the names of Homer and Shakespeare are consecrated. You are well acquainted with my failure, and how heavily I bore the disappointment. But just at the time I inherited the fortune of my cousin, and my thoughts were turned into the channel of their earlier bent. 6 years have passed since I resolved on my present undertaking, and I can even now remember the hour from which I dedicated myself to this great enterprise. I commenced by enduring my body to hardship. I accompanied the whale fishers on several expeditions to the northern sea. I volunteered enduring cold, famine, thirst, and want of sleep. I often worked harder than the common sailors during the day, and devoted my nights to the study of mathematics, the theory of medicine, and whose branches of physical science from which the naval adventurer might derive the greatest practical advantage. Twice I actually hired myself an undermate in the Greenland whaler, and acquitted myself to admiration. I must own I feel a little proud where my captain offered me the second dignity in the vessel, and entreated me to be reminded with the greatest earnest, so valuable did he consider my services. He was loud, I apologize. And now, dear Margaret, do I not deserve to accomplish some great purpose? Goodness me, I need to stop annotating so highly on these books. My life might have been passed in ease and luxury, and I preferred the glory to every enticement that wealth placed into my path. Oh, that some encouraging voice would answer in the affirmative. My courage and my resolution is firm, but my hopes fluctuate, and my spirits are often depressed. I am about to proceed on a long, difficult voyage, the emergencies of which will demand all of my fortitude, and I require not only to raise the spirits of others, but sometimes to sustain my own when theirs are falling. This is the most favorable period for traveling in Russia. They fly quick over the snow in their sleighs. The motion is pleasant, and in my opinion far more agreeable than that of English stagecoaches. The cold is not excessive if you are wrapped in furs, a dress which I have already adopted, for there is a great difference between walking the deck and remaining seated motionless for hours when not exercising to prevent the blood from actually freezing in your veins. I have no ambition to lose my life on the post road between St. Petersburg and Archangel, and I shall depart for the latter town in a fortnight or 3 weeks, and in my intention to hire a ship there, which can easily be done by paying the insurance for the owner. And I engaged many sailors, as I think necessary among those who are accustomed to whale fishing. I do not intend to sail until the month of June, and when shall I return? Ah, sister, how can I answer the question? If I succeed, many, many, many months, perhaps years, will pass before you and I may meet. If I fail, you will never see me again. Farewell, my dear, excellent Margaret. Heaven shower down blessings on you, and save me, that I may again and again testify my gratitude for all your love and kindness. Your affectionate brother, R. Walton. To answer your question, Full Moon, we are currently reading directly from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. That's what we're studying. It is our horror English, is what I am taking a class in currently, and so it is classical English, the reading Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. That's what we're currently doing. So now we are on to letter 2 at the beginning of the book. To Mrs. Seville of England, from Archangel, March 28th, 17. How slowly the time passes here, encompassed as I am by frost and snow, yet a second step is taken towards my enterprise. I have hired a vessel, and I am accompanied in collecting my sailors. Those whom I have already engaged appear to be men on whom I can depend, and are certainly possessed of dauntless courage. But I have one want which I have never been able to satisfy, and the absence of the object of which I now feel our most severe evil. I have no friend, Margaret. When I am glowing with the enthusiasm of success, there will be none to participate in my joy. If I am assailed by disappointment, no one will endure or endeavor to sustain me in injunction. I shall commit my thoughts to paper. It is true, but that is a poor medium of communication of feeling. I desire the company of a man who could sympathize with me, whose eyes would reply to mine. You may deem me romantic, my dear sister, but I bitterly feel the want of a friend. I have no one near me, gentle yet courageous, possessed of a cultivation as well as a capacious mind, whose tastes are like my own, to approve or amend my plans. How would such a friend repair the faults of your poor brother? I'm too ardent in execution and too impatient for difficulties. But if it was still greater evil to me, then I am self-educated. For the first 14 years of my life, I ran wild on a common, and read nothing but our Uncle Thomas's books of voyages. At that age, becoming acquainted with the celebrated poets of our own country, but it was only when I had ceased to be in my power to derive the most important benefits from such convictions, that I perceived the necessity of becoming acquainted with more languages than that of my own native country. Now I'm 28, and I am in reality more illiterate than some schoolboys at 15. And it is true that I have thought more, and that my daydreams are more extended and magnificent, but they want, as my painters call it, keeping. I am greatly need a friend who would have sense enough to not despise me as romantic, and affectionate enough for me to endeavor to regulate my mind. Well, these are useless complaints. I shall certainly find no friend on the wide ocean, nor even here in Archangel among the merchants and seamen. Yet some feelings, unallied to the dross of human nature, beat even in these rugged bosoms. My lieutenant, for instance, is a man wonderful of courage and enterprise. He is madly desirous of glory, or rather, to word my phrase more characteristically, of advancement in his profession. He is an Englishman, and in the midst of a national and professional prejudices, and unsoftened by cultivation, retains some of the noblest endowments of humanity. I first became acquainted with him on board a whale vessel, finding that he was unemployed in the city, and I easily engaged him to assist in my enterprise. The master is a person of excellent disposition, and is remarkable in his ship of his gentleness and the mildness of his discipline. This circumstance, added to his very known intrigue and dauntless courage, made me very desirous to engage him. A youth passed in solitude, my best years spent under your gentle and feminine forestage, has soon defined the groundwork of my character, that I cannot overcome an intense distaste for the unusual brutality of exercising on a board ship. I have never believed it to be necessary, and when I heard of a mariner equally noted for his kindliness of heart, and the respect and the obedience paid to him by his crew, I felt myself particularly fortunate to be able to be securing his services. I heard of him first in a rather romantic manner, from a lady who owes him the happiness of her life. This is briefly his story. Some years ago he loved a young Russian lady of moderate fortune, and having amassed a considerable sum of prize money, the father of the girl consented to the match. He saw his mistress once before the desired ceremony, but she was bathed in tears, throwing herself at his feet, entreating him to spare her, confessing that she, at the same time, that she loved another, but that he was poor, and that her father would never consent to the union. My generous friend reassured the supplement, and on being informed of the name of her lover, instantly abandoned his pursuit. He had already bought a farm with his money, on which he had designed to pass the remainder of his life, but he bestowed the whole onto his rival, together with the remains of his prize money to purchase stock, and then himself soliciting the young woman's father to consent her marriage to her lover, but the old man decidedly refused, thinking himself bound in honor to my friend, who, when he found the father exhortable, quitted his country, not returning until he heard that the former mistress was married according to her inclinations. What a noble fellow, you will exclaim. He is so. But when he was wholly uneducated, he is silent as a Turk, and a kind of ignorant carelessness attends him, which, while it renders his conduct to be more astonishing, detracts from the interest and sympathies of which otherwise would command. Yet do not suppose, because I complain a little, or because I can conceive a consolation for my toils, which I may never know, that I am wandering in my resolutions. Those are fixed as fate, and my voyage is only now delayed until the weather shall permit my embarkment. The winter has been dreadfully severe, but the spring promises well, and it considers as a remarkable early season, so that perhaps I may sail sooner than I expected. I shall do nothing rashly. You know me sufficiently to confide in my prudence and my considerations whatever the safety of others is committed to my care. I cannot describe to you my sensation on the near prospect of my undertaking. It is impossible to communicate to you a concept of trembling sensation, half pleasurable and half fearful, with which I am prepared to depart, and I am going to unexplored regions, to the land of mist and snow. But I shall kill no arbiters. Therefore, do not be alarmed for my safety. Or if I should come back to you as worn and woeful as the ancient mariner, you will smile at my illusions. But I will disclose a secret. I have often attributed my attachment to my passionate enthusiasm for the dangerous mysteries of the ocean, and to the production of the most imaginative of modern poets. There are some things at work in my soul which I do not understand, and I am particularly industrious, painstaking, and a workman to execute with the precedence of labor. But, besides this, there is a love for the marvelous, and belief in the marvelous, and entwined with all my projects, which hurries me out into the common pathways of man. Even the wild sea and visited regions I am about to explore, but to return to the dearer considerations. I shall meet you again, after having traveled immense seas, and returned by some southern cape of Africa or America. I dare not expect some success, yet I cannot bear to look at the reverse of the picture. Continue for the present to write to me by every opportunity. I may receive your letters on some occasion, and when I need them most, to support my spirits. I love you very tenderly, and remember me with affection should you never hear from me again. Your affectionate brother, Robert Walton. Letter 3 to Mrs. Seville in England on July 7th. My dear sister, I write a few lines in haste to say that I am safe and well advanced on my voyage. This letter will reach England by a merchant who is now on the homeward voyage from Archangel, more fortunate than I, who may not see my native land perhaps for many years. I am, however, in good spirits. My men are bold, and apparently firm of purpose, nor do the floating sheets of ice that continually pass us indicate the dangers of the region towards which we are advancing appear to dismay them. We have already reached a very high latitude, but it is in the height of summer, and although not so warm in England, the southern gales have blown as speedily towards the shores which I am so ardently desiring to attain. A breath of degree of renovational warm, which I had not expected. No incidents have hitherto are befallen us which will make us figure in a letter. 1 or 2 swift gales, and the springing of a leak are the accident in which experiencing navigators scarcely remember to record, and I shall be well content if nothing worse happens to us during our voyage. Adieu, my dear Margaret. Be assured that for my own sake, and well as yours, I shall not rashly encounter danger. I will be cool, preserved, and prudent. But success shall crown my endeavors, therefore, and thus far I have gone traced a secure way about the pathless seas, the very stars themselves being witnesses, testimonies of my triumph. Why not still proceed, a bolder, untamed, and yet obedient element? What can stop the determined heart and resolve of all man? My swelling heart involuntary pours itself out thus, and thus I finish here. Heaven blessed my beloved sister, R.W. Letter 4 to Mrs. Seville of England. So strange an accident has happened to us. To Mrs. Seville of England, August 5th, if y'all keeping track of the time. Let's just do this here. Cool. So strange an accident has happened to us that I cannot forbear recording it, although it is very probable that you will see me before these papers have come to your possession. Last Monday, July 31st, we were nearly surrounded by ice, which closed the ship on all sides, scarcely leaving the sea room where she floated. Our situation was somewhat dangerous, especially as we were encompassed around by thick fog. We accordingly lay to hope that some change would take place in the atmosphere of the weather. About 2 o'clock, the mist cleared away, and we beheld and stretched out in every direction. Vast and irregular plains of ice, which seemed to have no end. Some of my comrades groaned, and my own mind began to grow watchful, with anxious thoughts, when a strange sight suddenly catched our attention, and diverted our solicitation from our own situation. We perceived a low carriage fixed on a sledge, drawn by dogs, pass on towards the north, at the direction of a half-mile, being which that the shape of a man, but apparently of gigantic stature, sat in the sledge and guided the dogs. We watched the rapid progress of the traveler with our telescopes until he was lost among the distant infills of the ice. This appearance excited unqualified wonder. We were, as we believed, many hundreds of miles from any land, but this apparition seemed to denote that it was not, in reality, so distant as we had supposed. Shut in, however, by ice, it was impossible to follow his tracks, which had been observed with great attention. About 2 hours after this occurrence, we heard the ground sea, and before night the ice broke and freed our ship. We, however, lay until the morning, fearing to encounter in the dark those large, loose masses which float about above the water and break up the ice. I profited from this time to rest for a few hours, and in the morning, however, as soon as it was light, I went upon the deck and found all the sailors busy on one side of the vessel, apparently talking to someone in the sea. It was in fact a sledge, like what we had seen before, which was had drifted along towards us in the night, on a large fragment of ice. Only one dog remained alive, where there was a human being within it, whom the soldiers were persuading to enter the vessel. He was not, as other travelers seemed to be, a savage inhabitant of some undiscovered island, but a European. Which I appeared on the deck, the master said, "Here is our captain, and he will not allow you to perish on open sea." On perceiving me, the stranger addressed me in English, although in a foreign accent. "Before I've come aboard your vessel," he said, "will you have the kindness to inform me whither you are bound?" You may convince to my astonishment on hearing such a question, addressed to me from a man on the brink of destruction, and to whom I should have supposed that my vessel would have been a resource in which he could not have exchanged for the most precious wealth on earth can afford. I replied, however, that we were on a voyage to discovery towards the North Pole. Upon hearing this, he appeared satisfied, and consented to come aboard. Good God! Margaret, if you had seen the man who thus capitulated for his safety, our surprise would have been boundless. His limbs were nearly frozen, and his body dreadfully emaciated by fatigue and suffering. I had never saw a man in such a wretched condition. We had attempted to carry him into the cabin, but as soon as he quitted the fresh air, he fainted. We accordingly brought him back to the deck and restored him to animation by rubbing him with brandy and forcing him to swallow a few small quantities. As soon as he showed signs of life, we wrapped him in a blanket and placed him near the chimney of this kitchen stove. By slow degrees he recovered and ate a little soup, which restored him wonderfully. 2 days passed in this manner before he was able to speak, and I often feared that his sufferings had deprived him of understanding. When he had some measure recovered, I removed him to my own cabin, and attended on him as much as my duty would permit. I never saw a more interesting creature. His eyes had generally an expression of wildness and even madness, but there were moments when, if anyone performed an act of kindness towards him, or does him any of the most trifling services, his whole commencement is lightened up, as it were, with a beam of benevolence and sweetness that I had never saw quelled. But he is genuinely melancholy and despairing, and sometimes he gnashes his teeth, as if impatient at the weight of the woes that oppress him. When my guest was a little recovered, I had great trouble to keep off the men, who wished to ask him 1,000 questions. But I would not allow him to be tormented by their idle curiosity in a state of body and mind whose restoration evidently depended upon entire repose. Once, however, the lieutenant asked, why did he come so far up in the ice in so strange a vehicle? His countenance instantly assumed an aspect of deepest gloom, and he replied, to seek the one who fled from me. And did the man whom you pursued travel in the same fashion? Yes. Then I fancy we've seen him. For the day before we picked you up, we saw some dogs drawing a sledge with a man in it across the ice. This aroused the stranger's attention, and he asked a multitude of questions concerning the route in which the demon, as he called it, had pursued. Soon after, when he was alone with me, he said, I have doubtless excited your curiosity as well as that of these good people, but you are too considerate to make inquiries. Certainly it would be indeed a very impertinent and inhumane in me to trouble you with any inquisitiveness of mine. And yet you rescued me from a strange and perilous situation. You have benevolently restored me to life. And soon after this he inquired if I thought that the breakup of ice had destroyed the other sledge. I replied that I could not answer that with any degree of certainty, for the ice had not broken until nearly midnight, and the traveler might have arrived at a place of safety before that time. But of this I could not judge. From this time a new spirit of life animated the decaying frame of the stranger. He manifested the greatest earnest to be upon the deck, to watch for the sledge, which had before appeared. But I had persuaded him to remain in the cabin, for he was far too weak to sustain the rawness of an environment. Hello, welcome, White Wolf Audios. I had promised that someone would watch for him and give him instant notice if any new object should appear in sight. Such is my journal of what relates to this strange occurrence up to the present day. The stranger has gradually improved in health, but is very silent, and appears uneasy when anyone except myself enters his cabin. Yet his manners are so concealing and gentle that the sailors are all interested in him, although they have had very little communication with him. For my own part, I begin to love him as a brother, and his constant and deep grief fills me with sympathy and compassion. He must have been a noble creature in his better days, being even now in a wreck so attractive and amiable. I said in one of my letters, my dear Margaret, that I should find no friend in the open ocean. Yet I found a man who, before his spirit had been broken by misery, I should have been happy to have possessed as a brother of my heart. I shall continue my journey concerning the stranger in intervals, should I have any fresh incidents to record. My affection for my guest increases every day, and he excites me upon once of my admiration. How can I see no nobler creature destroyed by misery without feeling the most poignant grief? He is so gentle and yet so wise. His mind is so cultivated, and when he speaks, although the words are cold with the choicest art, they flow with rapidity and unparalleled eloquence. He is now much recovered from his illness, and is continually on the deck, apparently watching for the sledge that preceded of his own. Yet, although unhappy, he is not so utterly occupied by his own misery, but that he inserts himself deeply in the projects of others. He has frequently conversed with me on mine, which I have communicated to him without disguise. He entered attentively into all of my arguments in the favor of my eventual success, and into every minute of the detail of the measures I have taken to secure it. I was easily led by the sympathy in which he evinced to use language of my heart, to give the utterance of burning adder in my soul, and to say that in all favor warmed me, how gladly I would sacrifice my fortune, my existence, my every hope to the furnace of my enterprise. One man's life or death were but a small price to pay for the acquirement of knowledge which I sought. for the domination I could acquire and transmit over the elemental forces of our race. As I spoke, a dark gloom spread over the listener's countenance. At first, I perceived that he tried to suppress his emotion and place his hand before his eyes, and my voice quivered and failed me, as if he held tears trickling fast from between his fingers. A groan burst from inside his breast, heavy. I paused, and length he spoke in a broken accents. "Unhappy man, do you share my madness? Have you drank also of the intoxicating draught? Hear me. Let me tell you my tale, and you will dash the cup from your lips." Such words, you may imagine, strongly excited my curiosity, but the paradox of grief that had seized the stranger overcame his weakened powers, and many hours of repose and tranquil conversation were necessary to restore his composure. Having conquered the violence of his feelings, he appeared to reprise himself of being a slave of passion, and quelling the dark tyranny of despair. He led me again to converse concerning myself personally. He asked me the history of my early years. The tale was quickly told, but it awakened various trains of reflection. I spoke of my desire of finding a friend, and of thirsting for more innate sympathy with a fellow mind that had never fallen to my lot, and expressed my conviction that a man should boast a little happiness but did not enjoy his boasting. "I agree with you," replied the stranger. "We are unfashioned creatures, but half made up, if one wiser, one better, dearer than ourselves. Such a friend ought to be. Do not lend this aid to perfectionate our weak and faltered natures. I once had a friend, the most noble of human creatures, and I am entitled, therefore, to judge in respecting friendships. You have hope, and the world before you, and I have no cause to despair. But I have lost everything, and I cannot begin life anew." As he said this, his countenance became impressive of calm, settled grief that touched me to the heart. He was silent, and presently retired to his cabin. Even broken in spirit as he is, no one can feel more deeply than he does the beauties of nature, the starry sky, the sea, and every sight afforded by these wonderful regions seem to still have the power of elevating his soul from earth. Such a man had a doubled existence, that he may suffer misery and overwhelming disappointments, yet when he has retired to himself, he will be like a celestial spirit. It has halo around him, and within those circle no grief and folly and ventures. Hi, welcome, visitor. Thank you for dropping by. We're reading Frankenstein. Will you smile at the enthusiasm I express concerning this divine wanderer? You would not if you saw him. You have been tutored and refined by books in retirement from the world, and you are therefore somewhat facetious. But this only renders you more fit to appreciate the extraordinary merits of this wonderful man. Sometimes I have endeavored to discover what quality it is in which he possesses that elevates him so immeasurably above another person. I ever knew. I believe it to be an initiative of discernment, a quick and never-failing power of judgment, and a penetration into the causes of things unequaled for the clearness and the precision added to this facility of expression and voice, whose varied indentations of stone sublime music. August 19th. Yesterday the stranger said to me that you may easily perceive, Captain Walton, that I am suffering the great and unparalleled fortunes. I have determined at one time that the memory of these evils should die with me, but you have won me to alter my determination. You seek for knowledge and wisdom, as I once did, and I ardently hope that the gratification of your wishes may not be the serpent to sting you, as mine has been. I do not know the reflections and the relations of my disasters will be useful to you, but yet that I reflect that you are pursuing the same course, exposing yourself to the same dangers which have rendered me what I am, and I imagine that you deduce an apt moral from my tale. Bye-bye, visitor. If that other wave is a bye. I imagine that you deduce an apt moral from my tale, one that may direct you if you succeed in your undertaking and console you in the case of failure. Prepare to hear of the occurrence which are usually deemed marvelous. We were among the tamer scenes of nature. I might fear to encounter your unbelief. Prepare perhaps your ridicule, but many things will appear possible in these wild and mysterious regions, which have provoked the laughter of those acquitted from the ever-varying powers of nature. Nor can I doubt but that my tale conveys in the series of eternal evidence of truth and of the events in which it is to compose. You may easily imagine that I may be gratified by the offered communication, yet I could not endure that he should renew his grief by the recital of his misfortunes. I felt the greatest eagerness to hear and promised narrative, partially from the curiosity and partially from the strong desire to immortalize his fate, if it were in my power. I expressed these feelings in my answer. I thank you, he replied, for your sympathy, but it is useless. My fate is nearly fulfilled. I wait but for one event, and then I shall repose in peace. And I understand your feeling, he continued, perceiving that I wished to interrupt him. But you are mistaken, my friend, and if thus I will allow you to name you. Nothing but alter my destiny. Listen to my history, and you will perceive how irreconcilable it has been determined. Then he told me that he would commence his narrative the next day, when I should be at my leisure. This promise drew from me the warmest thanks, and I have resolved every night, when I am not interpolative, worried from my duties, to record, and nearly as possible in his own words, which he has related during the day. If I should be engaged, I will at least make notes. This manuscript shall doubtlessly afford the greatest pleasure, but to me, who knows him, and who hear it from his own lips, which is the interest and sympathy, shall I read it in some further day? Even now, as I commence my task with full-toned voice, swelled in my ears, lustrous eyes, dwelling in which, to all of their melancholy sweetness, I see his thin hand raised in animation, while the lineaments of his face are irradiated with the soul within. Strange and harrowing must his story, frightful the storm which embraced the gallant vessel upon it, and wrecked is thus. Hello, salty audios. Hello. Okay. Chapter 1 of Frankenstein. So that's just the prelude, guys. So to explain what those letters are Robert Walton writing to his sister Margaret Saville, who is in London, about that he is traveling up to the North Pole for an actual scientific expedition when he comes across a man on the ice who proceeds to tell him a story of his life and how his hubris led him into basic extinction. And so, Chapter 1 begins. Chapter 1. I am by birth a Genovese, and my family is one of the most distinguished of that republic. My ancestors had been for many years counselors and syndics, and my father had filled several public situations with honor and reputation. He was respected by all who knew him for his integrity and what is that? They've spelled it wrong in the book. Indefatigable attention to public business. He passed his younger days perpetually occupied with the affairs of his country and a variety of circumstances that had prepared this marrying early. Nor was it until the decline of life that he became a husband and a father of family. The audacity of you to honk while I'm reading. As the circumstances of his marriage illustrate his character, I cannot refrain from relating them. One of his most intimate friends was a merchant, who from a flourishing state fell through the numerous mischances into poverty. This man, whose name was Buford, was a proud and unbending disposition, and could not bear to live in poverty and oblivion in the same country in which he had formerly been distinguished for his rank and magnificence. Having paid his debts, therefore, in the most honorable manner, he retreated with his daughter to the town of Lucerne, where he lived unknown in wretchedness. My father loved Buford with the truest friendship and was deeply grieved by his retreatment into these unfortunate circumstances. He bitterly deplored the false pride in which his friend to conduct a so little worthy of affection to unite them. He lost no time in endeavoring to seek him out, with the hope of persuading him to begin the world again through his credit and assistance. Buford had taken effectual measures to conceal himself, and it was 10 months before my father discovered his abode. Overjoyed in this discovery, he hastened to the house in which the situation in the mean street near Reus. But when he entered, misery and despair alone welcomed him. Buford had saved but a very little sum of money from the wreck of his fortune, but it was sufficient to provide him with a sustenance for some months, and in the meantime he hoped to procure some goodness me, I'm choking. He hoped to procure some respectable employment in a merchant's house. The interval was consequently spent in inaction. His grief only became more deep. Sorry, guys. Water! Oh my gosh. Okay. That hurt. Okay. Lord, what time? 3 months. Okay. His grief only became more deep and rankling when he was in leisure for reflection. And at length it took so fast hold of his mind that at the end of the 3 months he laid on a bed of sickness, incapable of any exertion. His daughter attended him with great tenderness, but she saw with despair that their little fund was rapidly decreasing, and that there was no prospect of support. But Caroline Buford possessed a mind of an uncommon molding, and her courage rose to support her in her adversity. She procured plain work, the plate straw, and by various means contrived to earn a pittance of scarce sufficient to support life. 7 months passed in this manner. Her father grew worse. Her time was more entirely occupied in attending him. Her means of subsistence decreased, and in the 10th month her father died in her arms, leaving her an orphan and a beggar. This last blow overcame her as she knelt by Buford's coffin, weeping bitterly when my father entered the chamber. He came like a protective spirit to the poor girl, who committed herself to his care, and after the interment of his friend, he conducted her to Geneva, and placed her under the protection of a relation. 2 years after this event, Caroline became his wife. There was considerate difference between the ages of my parents, but this circumstance seemed to unite them only closer in the bonds of devoted affection. There was a sense of justice in my father's upright mind, which rendered it necessary that he should approve highly to love strongly. Perhaps during former years he had suffered from a late-discovered unworthiness of one beloved. He was so disposed to set a greater value on tried worth. There was a show of gratitude and worship in his attachment to my mother, differing wholly from the doting fondness of age, from it was inspired by the reverence of her virtues and a desire to be the means of some degree recompensating her for her sorrows that she had endured, which gave inexpressible graces to her behavior. Everything was made to yield to her wishes and to her convenience. He strove to shelter her, as a fair exotic is sheltered by a gardener, from every rougher wind, and to surround her with all that could tend to excite pleasure, emotion in her soft and benevolent mind. Her health, and even the tranquillity of her hitherto constant spirit, had been shaken by what she had gone through, and during the 2 years that had elapsed previous to their marriage, my father had gradually relinquished all of his public functions, and immediately became, after their union, they sought a pleasant climate in Italy. The change of scene and interest adamant on the tour through the lands of wonders a restorative of her weakened frame. From Italy they visited Germany and France. I, their eldest child, was born in Naples, and as an infant accompanied them in their rambles. I remained for several years their only child. Much as they were affected to each other, they seemed to draw inexhausted stores of affection from a very mine of love to bestow upon me. my mother tendered caresses, and my father's smile of benevolent pleasure while regarding me are my first recollections. I was their plaything and their idol, and something better, their child. The innocent and helpless creature bestowed upon them by heaven, whom to bring up to good, and whose future lot it was in their hands to direct to happiness or misery, according as they fulfilled their duties towards me. With this deep conscience of what they had owed towards to the being of which they had given life, added to the active spirit of tenderness and the animated both, it may have imagined that while during every hour of my infant life I received a lesson on patience, of clarity, and self-control, I was guided by a silken cord that all seemed but one train of enjoyment to me. For a long time I was their only care. My mother had much desire to have a daughter, but I continued their single offspring. When I was about 5 years old, while making an excursion upon the frontiers of Italy, they passed a week on the shore of the Lake Corno. Their benevolent disposition often made them enter the cottages of the poor. This, my mother, was more than a duty. It was a necessity, a passion. Remembering what she had suffered and how she had been relieved for her to act in her turn the guardian angel to afflict. During one of their walks, a poor cot in the folding of a veil attached to their notice as being singularly disconsolate, while the number of half-clothed children gathering about it spoke of the preneur of its worst shape. One day, when my father had gone by himself to Milan, my mother accompanied me visiting this abode. She found a peasant and his wife, hard-working, bent down by care and labor. Disturbingly a scanty meal to feed 5 hungry babes, and among there was one which attracted my mother far above all the rest. She appeared of a different stock. The 4 others were dark-eyed, hardy little vagrants. This child was thin and very fair. Her hair was the brightest living gold, and despite the poverty of her clothing, seemed to set a crown of distinction on her head. Her brow was clear and ample, her blue eyes cloudless, her lips and molding of her face so expressive and sensible and sweet that none could behold her without looking at her as a distinct species of being heaven-sent and bearing a celestial stamp in all her features. The peasant woman perceived that my mother fixed eyes of wonder and admiration on this lovely child, eagerly communicated her history. She was not her child, but the daughter of a Milanese nobleman. Her mother was a German and had died in giving birth to her. The infant had been placed with these good people to nurse. They were better off then. They had not been married long, and their eldest child was just born. The father of their charge was one of those Italians nursed in the memory of the ancient glory of Italy, one of those among the Scivola Adolfamenti, who exerted himself to obtain the liberty of his country. He became a victim of its weakness. Whether he had died or was still lingering in the dungeons of Austria was not known. His property was confiscated, his child became an orphan and a beggar, and she continued with her foster parents and bloomed in their rude abode, fairer than the garden rose among dark-leaved brambles. When my father returned from Milan, he found me playing in the hall of our villa, a child fairer than a pictured cherub, a creature who seemed to shed radiance from her looks, and whose form and motions were lighter than the chameleon of hills. The Parisians soon explained. With his permission, my mother prevailed in her rustic guardianship to yield their charge to her. They were fond of the sweet orphan. Her presence had seemed like a blessing to them, but it would be unfair to keep her in such poverty and want when the Providence afforded her such powerful protection. They consulted their village priest, and the result was that Elizabeth Lavenza became the inmate of my parents' house. My more than sister, the beautiful and adoring companion of all of my occupations and pleasures. Everyone loved Elizabeth. The passionate and almost reverent attachment with which I all regarded her became while I shared my pride and delight. On the evening previous to her being brought to my home, my mother said playfully, "I have a present for you, my Victor. Tomorrow he shall have it." And when, on the morrow, she presented Elizabeth to me as her promised gift, I, with childish seriousness, interpreted her words literally, and I looked upon Elizabeth as mine to protect, love, and cherish. All praises bestowed upon her I received as made to my possession of my own. we called each other more familiarly by the name of cousin. No word, no expression could body forth the kind of relation in which she stood to me. My more than sister, since till death she was to be mine alone. So that's chapter 1. So this is the backstory currently of the guy we just found on the ice. Does anyone have any questions? Any questions about what's going on? Because I can definitely answer that. Because it's only gonna get downhill from here, y'all. His childhood is the only good thing that's happening. Let's see. Why don't we... Let's see. Ooh, chapter 2 is kind of a long one. Let's see how many people are present here in chat right now.
With Canva.
Alrighty, let's do that. And I think we're going to continue to chapter 2, and depending if people still want to continue to watch, we will keep going. So, chapter 2. We were brought up together. There was not quite a year's difference in our ages. I need not say that we were strangers to any species of disunion or dispute. Harmony was the soul of our companionship, and the diversity and contrast that subsisted in our characters drew us near together. Elizabeth was of a calmer and more concentrated disposition, but with all my ardor, I was capable of more intense application, and was more deeply smitten with the thirst for knowledge. She busied herself with the following of material creation of poets, and into the majestic and wondrous scenes which surrounded our Swiss home. The sublime shapes of mountains, the changes of seasons, tempest and calm, and the silence of winter, and the life and the turbulence of our alpine summers. She found ample scope for the admiration and delight, while my companion contemplated with a seriousness and satisfied spirit the magnificent appearance of things I delighted in investigating in their causes. The world was to me a secret which I desired to divine. Curiosity, earnest, and research to learn, and the hidden laws of nature, gladness akin to rapture, as they were unfolded to me, are among the earliest sensations that I remember. On the birth of a second son, my junior by 7 years, my parents gave up entirely their wandering life and fixed themselves unto their native country. We possessed a home in Geneva, and a campaign upon the Barive, and the eastern shore of the lake at the distance of rather more than a league from the city. We resided principally in the latter, and lived of my parents were passed in a considerate seclusion. It was my temper to avoid a crowd, and to retract myself fervently to a few. I was indifferent, therefore, to my school friends in general, but I was united with the bonds of close friendship to one among them. Henry Clerval was the son of a merchant of Geneva. He was a boy of singular talent and fancy. He loved enterprise, hardship, and even danger for its own sake. He was deeply read in the books of chivalry and romance, and he comprised heroic songs and began to write many a tale of enchantment and knightly adventure. He tried to make us act plays and to enter into masquerades in which the characters were drawn from the heroes of Roscoval and the Round Table of King Arthur, and in the chivalrous train who shed their blood to redeem the holy spectre from the hands of the infidels. No human being could have passed a happier childhood than myself. My parents were possessed by the spirit of kindness and indulgence, and they felt that they were not tyrants in their rule over the lot according to their caprice, but the agents and the creators of all many delights which we enjoyed. But when I mingled with other families, I distinctly discerned how peculiarly fortunate lot I was, and gratitude assisted the development of my filial love. My temper was sometimes violent, and my passions Wilhelm, but some law in my temperance they were turned, not towards childish pursuits, but an eager desire to learn, and not to learn all things indiscriminately. And I confess that neither the structure of languages, nor the codes of government, nor the politics of various states, nor possessed the attraction for me. It was the secrets of heaven and earth that I desired to learn. And whether it was the outward substance of things, or the inner spirit of nature and the mysterious soul of man that occupied me, till my inquiries were directed onto the metaphysical, or into the highest sense, the physical secrets of the world. Oh, welcome back, Crazy Anime Gamer! Everyone has behaved so far. Everyone is listening so far. Meanwhile, Clerval occupied himself to speak with moral revelations of things. The busy stage of life, the virtues of heroes, the actions of men were his theme, and his hope and dream was to become one among those with the names are recorded in history as the gallant, adventurous benefactors of our species. The saintly soul of Elizabeth shone like a shrine-dedicated lamp in our peaceful home. Her sympathy was ours, her smile, her soft voice, the sweet glance of her celestial eyes were ever there to bless and animate us. She was the living spirit of love to soften and attract. I might have been sullen in my study, rough thorough to the otter of my nature, but she was there too, to subdue me to resemblance of her own gentleness. And Clerval? Could aught ill entrench the noble spirit of Clerval? Yet he might not have been so perfectly humane, so thoughtful in his generosity, so full of kindness and tenderness amidst his passions of adventurous exploit, had she not unfolded him to the real loveliness of beneficence, and made the doing good at the end and aim of his soaring ambition. I feel exquisite pleasure in the dwelling on the recollection of my childhood, before misfortune had tainted my mind, and changed its bright visions of extensive usefulness into the gloomy and narrow reflections upon itself. Besides in drawing the picture of my early days, I also recorded those events which led in insatiable steps to my after the tale of misery. For when I would account myself to the birth of that passion, which afterwards ruled my destiny. I find it arise like a mountain river from ignoble, and I also forgotten sources, but swelling as it proceeds, and it becomes the torrent in which in its course has stepped away to all my hopes and joys. Natural philosophy is in the genius that has regulated my fate, and I desire therefore in this narration to state those facts to which I led my predilections to science. When I was 13 years of age, we all went on a party of pleasure to the baths near Taunton. The inclemency of the weather obliged us to remain a day confined in the inn, and in this house I chanced to find a volume of the works of Cornelius Agrippa, and I opened it with the apathy, and the theory in which he attempted to demonstrate the wonderful facts in which he relates soon changed my feelings into enthusiasm. A new light seemed to dawn upon my mind, and bound me with joy. I communicated my discovery to my father. My father looked carelessly at the title of my book and said, Cornelius Agrippa, my dear Victor, don't waste your time upon this. It is sad trash. If instead of this remark my father had taken the pains to explain to me that the principles of Agrippa were entirely exploded, and that the modern system of science had been introduced, which possessed such great powers in the ancients because the powers of the latter were chimerical, which those of the former were real and practical. Upon other circumstances, I would have certainly thrown the Agrippa aside, and had contented my imagination, warmed it as it was by, to return to the greater ardor of my former studies. It was even possible that the train of my ideas would never have perceived the final fatal impulse that led to my ruin. But the cursory glance that my father had taken at my volume by no means assured me that he was acquainted with its contents, and I continued to read it with the greatest civility. When I returned home, my first care was to procure the whole works of this author, and afterwards of Pacarus and Albertus Magnus. I read and studied the wild fancies of these writers with delight. They appeared to me treasures known to be few besides myself, and I had described myself as always had been imbued with a fervent longing to perpetuate the secrets of nature. And in spite of this intense labor and wonderful discoveries of modern philosophers, I always came from my studies discontent and unsatisfied. Sir Isaac Newton is said to have avowed that he felt like a child picking up the shells beside the great and unexplored ocean of truth. Those of his successors in each branch of natural philosophy with whom I had acquainted and appeared, even to my boy's apprehension of terrors, engaged in the same pursuit. The untaught peasant beheld the elements around him, and was acquainted with their practical uses. The most learned philosopher knew little more. He had particularly unveiled the face of nature, but her immoral lineaments had still a wonder and a mystery. He might dissect anonymously and give names, but not to speak of the final cause. Cause in these secondary and terrestrial grades were utterly unknown to him. I had glazed upon the fortification and appendicing that seemed to keep human beings, from entering the citadel of nature, and rashly and the ignorance I had repinned. But there were books, and there were men who had penetrated deep and knew more. And I looked their studies for all they had heard, and I became their disciple. I may appear strange that should such arise in an 18th century, but while I followed the routines of education in the schools of Geneva, I was, to a great degree, self-taught with regards to my favorite studies. My father was not scientific, and I was left to struggle with a child's blindness added to the student's thirst for knowledge. Under the guidance of my new preceptors, I entered with a great diligence into the search of philosopher's stone and the elixir of life, but the latter soon obtained my undivided attention. Wealth was an inferior object, but what glory would attend the discovery if I could banish disease from the human frame and render man invulnerable to anything but a violent death? Nor were these my only visions. The raising of ghosts or devils was promised liberally according to my favorite authors, the fulfillment of which I was most eagerly sought. And if my incantations were always unsuccessful, and attributed to the failure rather than my own inexperience and mistake than to want a skilled and feelide of my instructors. And thus, for a time, I was occupied by exploding systems, mingling like an unadapted 1,000 contradictory theories, and floundering desperately in a very slough of unfarious knowledge, guided by an ardent imagination and childish reasoning, till an accident again changed the current of my ideas. When I was about 15 years old, we had retired to our house near Bellerive, and when we witnessed a most violent and terrible thunderstorm, it advanced from behind the mountains of Juna, and the thunder burst at once with a frightful loudness that came from various quarters of heaven. I remained while the storm lasted, watching its progress with curiosity and delight, and as I stood at the door, on a sudden I beheld a stream of fire issue from an old and beautiful oak, which stood about 20 yards from our house, and as soon as the dazzling light vanished, the oak disappeared, and nothing remained but a blasted stump. When we visited the next morning, we found the tree shattered with a singular manner. It was not splintered by the shock, but entirely reduced to thin ribbons of wood. I had never beheld anything so utterly destroyed. Before this, I was not unacquainted with the most obvious laws of electricity. On this occasion, a man of great research in natural philosophy was with us, and, excited by this catastrophe, he entered on the explanation of a theory that he had formed on the subject of electricity, galvanism, and which was once new and astonished to me. All he said through greatly was the shade of Cornelius Agrippa, of Bulgus Magnus, and Paracelsus, the lords of my imagination. But by some fatality, the overthrow of these men inclined me to pursue my accustomed studies. It seemed to me as if nothing would or could ever be known. All that had long engaged my attention suddenly grew despicable, but one of these caprices of mind, which had perhaps more subject in early years, I at once gave up my former occupation, set down natural history of all of its produce, and then deformed an abortive creation, and entertained the greatest disdain for the would-be science, which could never even have stepped throughout the threshold of real knowledge. In this mood of mind I betook myself into mathematics and branches of study appearing that of science, as being built upon secure foundation, and as of worth for my consideration. Thus, strangely, our souls constructed, and by such slight ligaments were bound to prosper or ruin. When I look back, it seemed to me as if the most miraculous change of inclination and will has immediately suggested of a guardian angel of my life. The last effort made by the spirit of preservation to avert the storm that had even then hanged in the stars and ready to envelop me. First victory was announced by an unusual tranquillity and gladness of soul, which followed the relinquishments of my ancient and latter tormenting studies. It was thus that I was taught to associate evil with their prosecution, and happiness with their disregard. And it was a strong effort of the spirit of good, but it was ineffectual. Destiny was too potent, and her immutable laws had decreed my utter and terrible destruction. And that is the end of chapter 2. That is currently the end of chapter 2. So how is everybody feeling? Does everybody like it so far? Would anyone like me to explain what's going on within the novel right now? So I can explain what we just read, if anyone would like to hear about that. And also, so we now know that this is Victor Frankenstein, or specifically, we know him in the book as Victor, and he is a college student that is now experimenting in the sciences. And as you can imagine, we all know it's about to go really downhill from here. Because as many of you know, without even reading the novel, that Frankenstein created the monster, right? That we know as Frankenstein. It's a very fascinating book. It's very fascinating. I've read through it once before, and it only becomes more and more complicated from here. It's gonna get crazy. Ooh, hold on. I got a ping. Let me see what this is about. What is this? Hold on. Before we continue, I don't know if we will be reading any more Frankenstein tonight. Okay. So, I think what we're going to do for tonight is, let me see, I think we might call it, a night here for right now. And so if you guys want, this was a fun little study session. And so I will keep you guys updated on everything that's going on. If you like the study streams, let me know, because I would love to continue to do these study streams for you guys. I actually really like doing the study streams. And I really liked reading for you guys, especially this Frankenstein stuff and doing analysis and helping you guys with your studying. That I would love to keep doing. So, as you know, I will put my links in the thing. You can also find all of my information on my Twitter, right? And you can find out stuff. I will let you guys update. Remember, either by this weekend or the next weekend, we will have the Gemini Audios merch store up, and I have some stuff that will be coming out for Halloween, as well as I have some cool gear coming out, which is our classic Gemini Audio stuff, which has our Gemini Audios logo, as well as some other things, like for specifically some Cosmos gear. Be a part of the Cosmos crew, and when it comes out, you'll probably see a trailer soon with all of the merchandise that will be available. So please have a ton of fun, enjoy, have a wonderful day, and sleep well, everybody. It's 10 o'clock here in CST, so I hope everyone has a good night. If you're listening in the morning, I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope that you have everything that you wished for, and that your day is full of wonderful, amazing stuff and peace. And remember, Gemini loves you so very much. And have a wonderful night and day, everybody. Bye-bye. I'll see you in the stars another time.